The auctioneer's voice rang out like a hammer on steel, each call pushing the price higher. The arena was packed, a sea of eager faces watching as the next thoroughbred was led into the ring. Under the glaring lights, the horse stood tall, its muscles rippling beneath a sleek coat. It should have been a spectacle, a prize, yet murmurs rippled through the crowd something was off. A well-dressed man in the front row leaned forward, scrutinizing the animal with the sharp gaze of someone who had seen too many deals go wrong. Then, with the smallest shake of his head, he leaned back, dismissing it. No bid. No interest. The crowd shifted uneasily. This man was known for spotting champions before anyone else. If he wasn't biting, maybe no one should. Silence stretched. The auctioneer cleared his throat, trying to mask the hesitation creeping into his voice. Do I hear an opening bid? Nothing. A murmur from the back, then laughter low, knowing. The kind that says a secret's already been shared. A horse without a buyer. A deal gone cold before it even began. The millionaire smirked, confident in his choice. Another mistake dodged. Another failure left for someone else to claim. Then, from the edge of the crowd, a voice cut through. 1,000. It was quiet but firm, carrying none of the hesitation that hung in the air moments ago. Heads turned. A man in a dusty jacket stood near the back, his hands rough from work, his boots worn thin. A farmer, by the looks of him, not the kind who should be bidding at an auction like this. The audience barely contained their amusement. The millionaire's smirk widened. He almost pitied the fool. The auctioneer hesitated only for a second, then slammed his gavel. Sold. The finality of it hit the room like a slap. A horse rejected, unwanted, abandoned by the elite had found an owner in the unlikeliest of hands. The whispers began before the dust even settled. Some called it madness. Others, blind luck. But none of them knew what had just happened. None of them realized that in this single, overlooked purchase, an empire was about to be built. The murmurs followed the farmer as he stepped forward, reaching out to take the lead rope. The horse flicked its ears, shifting its weight, sensing something the others had missed. To the crowd, it looked like a foolish purchase, an animal discarded by the sharpest eye in the room, taken by a man who looked like he could barely afford to be there. A few chuckled, shaking their heads. The millionaire didn't bother looking back. He had already moved on, certain that he had just dodged a costly mistake. Outside the auction house, the farmer traced a hand down the horse's neck, feeling the raw power beneath its skin. The animal wasn't trembling, wasn't anxious. There was a steadiness to it, a quiet intelligence in its eyes that hadn't shone under the glare of the lights. It wasn't the first time he'd taken in something others had thrown away. The difference was, this time, he wasn't entirely sure what he had just bought. As he led the horse toward his truck, a voice called out, "You know that thing's worthless, right?" A younger man, one of the stable hands, leaned against the fence, smirking. That's why he didn't bid. That horse won't make you a cent. The farmer didn't answer right away. He glanced back at the auction house, where the millionaire was shaking hands with other buyers, sealing deals worth more than the farm he'd left that morning. Then he looked at the horse calm, collected, waiting. "Guess we'll see," he finally said, securing the rope and climbing into the driver's seat. The ride home was long, the roads winding through fields where the grass swayed like slow-moving waves. The farm wasn't much, just enough to get by. A few old barns, some fenced pastures, and land that had been in his family for generations. The money he'd spent today hadn't been extra, there was no extra. It had been a risk, a bet placed on instinct alone. As the truck rolled to a stop, he glanced in the rearview mirror. The horse stood in the trailer, still composed, still unreadable. That night, after settling the horse into its new stall, he sat on the porch, staring out at the darkened fields. The doubts crept in. Had he made a mistake? Had he let pride or desperation push him into something he couldn't afford? He exhaled slowly, rubbing his hands together. There was no taking it back now. Whatever the truth was, it would reveal itself soon enough. What he didn't know was that, miles away, the millionaire had just received a phone call. The kind that made a man sit up straight, that drained the color from his face. A mistake had been made, but it wasn't the farmer's. The ringing phone cut through the quiet hum of conversation in the millionaire's private lounge. He almost ignored it until he saw the number. His expression sharpened. The man on the other end was not someone who called without reason. With a quick glance around, he stepped away from the others, pressing the phone to his ear. "Tell me you didn't let it go," the voice demanded, low and tight. The millionaire's jaw set. "That horse was worthless," he said, though for the first time there was a sliver of hesitation in his tone. Silence. Then a slow exhale. No, it wasn't. Something in his stomach twisted. He paced toward the window, fingers tightening around the phone. "What are you saying? You just gave away the most valuable animal in that entire auction." The words landed like a punch. His mind raced, pulling at every detail of the horse he'd dismissed. The one standing under the auction lights, still and composed. Had he missed something? That was impossible. He didn't make mistakes like that. But the voice on the phone wasn't the kind to waste breath on empty warnings. Meanwhile, back at the farm, the night stretched deep and silent. The farmer couldn't sleep. He found himself drawn back to the barn, to the animal standing inside, as if it had always belonged there. The horse turned its head when he approached, watching him with eyes that seemed to see more than they should. Something about it unsettled him, not in a way that made him afraid, but in a way that made him realize this wasn't an ordinary horse. Then he saw it. A mark, barely visible beneath the horse's dark coat, hidden where no casual glance would have noticed. He brushed his fingers over it, the shape sinking into his mind like a buried secret suddenly unearthed. His breath caught. He didn't know exactly what he had, but he knew one thing for certain: this wasn't a mistake. This was something bigger than he'd ever imagined. And miles away, the millionaire was already in motion, his driver speeding toward the auction house, heart hammering in his chest. He needed to fix this. He needed that horse back. But it was too late. The headlights cut through the darkness as the millionaire's car tore down the road, his mind a storm of calculations and disbelief. He had built his fortune on knowing value before anyone else did, on never second-guessing his instincts. And yet, tonight, he was chasing after a decision he had been so sure about just hours ago. The weight of the mistake pressed against his chest. He wasn't just trying to buy back a horse, he was trying to erase a failure that should have never happened. At the farm, the farmer stood frozen in the barn, his fingers still tracing the mark beneath the horse's coat. It wasn't a birthmark. It wasn't random. He had seen something like it once before, years ago, in an old racing catalog filled with legendary bloodlines and fortunes that had been made overnight. A mark like this wasn't an accident. It was proof that this horse came from a lineage worth millions. A hidden heir. His hands shook as he stepped back, realization crashing over him like a wave. That auction hadn't been an accident. Someone had hidden the horse's true identity, either out of carelessness or intent. And now, by sheer chance, it belonged to him. The weight of it was overwhelming. What was he supposed to do with something like this? He had barely scraped together enough to buy it, and now it was worth more than everything he owned. Then came the sound of tires grinding against gravel. A car. The farmer turned, his gut tightening as he spotted the sleek black vehicle pulling into his driveway. The headlights shut off, and the door swung open before the engine had even died. The millionaire stepped out, his face unreadable, but his movements sharp, precise. He wasn't here to talk. He was here to take back what he had lost. The barn light flickered, casting long shadows as the two men faced each other. The air between them was thick with unspoken words, two completely different worlds colliding over a single animal. The millionaire took a slow step forward, his voice measured but firm. "I made a mistake." The farmer didn't move. "Looks like it." A beat of silence. Then a checkbook appeared in the millionaire's hand. "I'll pay you double what you spent." "Triple." His eyes flicked to the horse, jaw tight. "It doesn't belong here." The farmer let out a breath, shaking his head. "No, it doesn't. But it doesn't belong to you either." A flicker of something crossed the millionaire's face, frustration, maybe even desperation. He wasn't used to being told no. He had spent years bending people to his will with money, power, influence. But this was different. This wasn't a negotiation. The horse shifted in the stall, nostrils flaring as if it could sense the weight of the moment. The millionaire exhaled sharply, fingers gripping the checkbook. "That horse is worth more than you understand. Whatever you think you're holding on to, it's bigger than you." The farmer's lips pressed together. He knew that. He knew that better than anyone now. But the moment he let that horse go, he'd never see it again. It would be swallowed back into a world that had tried to erase it, turned into a tool for someone else's gain. He had spent his whole life being overlooked, dismissed just like that horse had been tonight. And now, for the first time, he held something they had missed, something they had thrown away. So he made his choice. "You walked away from it once," the farmer said, stepping back toward the stall. "That was your mistake." He patted the horse's side, feeling its strength beneath his palm. "Now it's mine." The millionaire's mouth set into a thin line. He studied the farmer, searching for weakness, for hesitation. He found none. The checkbook closed with a sharp flick. Without another word, he turned and walked back to his car, slamming the door behind him. The engine roared to life, but he didn't drive off right away. He sat there for a long moment, hands gripping the wheel, staring at the barn as if trying to rewrite what had happened. But there was nothing left to change. As the taillights disappeared down the road, the farmer let out a slow breath, his pulse finally steadying. He didn't know what came next. He didn't know if he had just made the smartest decision of his life or the most dangerous. But one thing was certain tonight: the underdog had won.